Hello, everyone. It's Rabbi Brian Bileci. So glad to be with you. We are live right now, and we're just so excited for another Hebrew class. And we're in the book of Leviticus, and we're excited about jumping into another portion of the book of Leviticus. And we're going to look at Parashat Emor at this time. So we're so grateful that you have joined us. And if you haven't liked us and subscribed on YouTube, and if you maybe are looking for a family on Facebook, we're just excited that you have joined us, and we are live on Facebook right now. We will answer your questions, we'll help you with your Hebrew, we'll help you understand the Bible and really understand your faith. So we're excited that you have joined us tonight, and we are going to go ahead and jump into our lesson this week. Again, we're in Parashat Emor, coming from Leviticus chapter 21. The special reading of Leviticus 23 gives us all the feast days, so we're excited about that. And we're going to jump right into Parashat Emor. So let's learn some Hebrew right now. Let's go ahead and get started and look at our Hebrew lesson as we start to look at the Aleph Beit Hebrew letters that are 22 total. They're consonant letters, and 11 of them can be seen as a prefix to even create a phrase. So we need to learn these 22 Hebrew letters. And the beautiful thing about Hebrew is that they're pictures, they're pictographs. And so you can see, like, the letter Aleph is the picture of an ox head. The letter Beit is the picture of Bait, which is a house. Gimel is the picture of a gamal, a camel. And we also know Delet is a door. So you want to be able to learn Hebrew as it's written in the Hebrew tongue, because it's one of those things that has such a rich meaning. It has very rich meaning when you learn Hebrew. The letter Aleph, again, the picture of an ox head. And how about the letter Beit? We know the letter Beit is a picture of a house, and the ancient pictograph looks like the layout of a house. Or how about the letter Gimel? Gimel is an important letter. It is a picture of a camel, and it loads up many blessings, like Gamaliel or Gamliel, the teacher of the Apostle Paul. So we're grateful that you have joined us, and jumping into a little bit of Hebrew helps as we look at the Aleph Beit, Aleph being an Aleph, an ox, Beit being the letter that is a picture of Bait, a house, Gimel, a Gamal, a camel, and Dalet is a door. So as we start with our Aleph Beit, 5 letters at a time with a short breath in between, let's go ahead and sound the letters out. We pray that you will have eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts to understand the deep things of God as we let the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, lead us and guide us into all truth today. So let's jump in on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud. Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech. Ain, Pe, Sadi, Kuf, Resh. Last 2, Shin, Tav. Tov Me'od. All right, so that's 22 consonant letters that with a Nikud vocalization, we'll be able to pronounce one letter at a time with an accompanying vowel for a simple syllable that we will see in Hebrew. We have 2 types of syllables. We have an open syllable, as in the first letter and vowel for shalom. Sha is the letter shin, and the symbol underneath is kamatz, the little T symbol, and that would be a consonant plus a vowel. That would be C plus V equals an open syllable. We can also say shalom with sha, open mouth, open syllable, and lom. The only difference is this is a C plus V plus C, a consonant plus a vowel with a closing consonant. So as we say shalom, shalom, or transliterated shalom, we know that shalom means peace, and it's actually coming from the idea of wholeness. And we say a double portion of that, shalom, shalom, when in Israel, do as Israelis, and throughout the world, when you greet someone before the Sabbath, you say shalom, shalom. And this comes from Isaiah 26:3, that I will give you perfect peace, or a double portion of peace, or the abundance of peace, if your mind is stayed upon the Lord. So we're thankful that we can say shalom to one another, and shalom requires us to use a interesting letter called a sophit, which is the letter mem. Mem Sofit. It's one of the 5 letters that have a different look at the end of a word. So that would start with Kaf, the C-looking symbol that looks backwards. With the dot inside, it'd be a K sound, Kaf. Or remove the dot, called a Dagesh, and that would be Chaf. So we go from K to Ch. So Kaf and Chaf. And at the end of the word, it's Chaf Sofit. Then there's Mem, Mem Sofit. Nun, Nun Sofit. Pe, which can be Fe if you take the dot or Dagesh out of the center. And also at the end of the word, it's usually Fe Sofit. And then Sadi for Sadi Sofit. So we're actually going to use a Mem Sofit to close out the syllable Lom. Shalom. Shalom. So again, look at the Mem. The Mem looks like a water symbol before it's at the end of the word, and then it looks like a closed-in box after that. So we have Shalom. Also, we talked about the letter Aleph, and the letter Aleph has the F or PH sound at the end, Aleph, where we get Aleph Beit or alphabet, and the Aleph has a Fe Sofit. So the Fe Sofit is the letter Pe, which is the picture of a mouth, the letter Pe, and Pe would be with a Dagesh in the center, the dot. Remove the dot, it goes from P to PH, or transliterated like an Israeli would transliterate it, an F. So the Aleph is also spelled with PH at the end, but in Hebrew, we would spell it this way, Aleph, Aleph. So Aleph would be spelled with a Fe Sofit at the end of the word. So when you're thinking about how Hebrew works, again, the concept is the consonant plus a vowel equals an open syllable, and a consonant plus a vowel plus another consonant would be a closed syllable. So how we're going to learn Hebrew is one letter at a time. We would start with maybe, for instance, this Aleph, which is silent. And we're going to put this symbol that looks like a little T underneath. It's called a kamatz. Kamatz. And when we have this little T symbol, we know that the T symbol represents the ah sound. So we can look at the ah sound. Ah. Also, we have one line that would also be ah, ah. But in this case, it's going to go from ah, long sound, to ah, ah, medium. And we can shorten it even more to ah, ah, using the 2 dots on the right side that we normally see as a shva, which would be a short E sound or come to a glottal stop. We have these different dots and dashes. Again, we call this nikud vocalization. Okay, so let's see if we can understand. Again, nikud vocalization is what we'll use to pronounce these consonant letters with their accompanying vowel. So if we actually take a look at the vowel system, we know that in the Torah scroll, we don't have vowel indicators that are the dots and dashes or nikud vocalization. What we have instead is 5 letters that can be an indicator. The Aleph can be various sounds since it's silent, just like the silent letter Ein. And in between Aleph and Ein, we have He, Vav, and Yud. Like Vav can be an O or an U sound. As a consonant, it's a V. As a vowel, it's an O or an U. Or the letter Yud, which is usually an I vowel, but it could also be accompanied by an A or an E for I or A sound. So we have the vowel indicator that's either holding the place of a vowel or it's indicating the presence of a vowel. So let's go ahead and take Aleph as an example. And let's go ahead and start with the long, medium, and short ah sound. So we have the kamatz, the T-looking symbol, and that would be ah. Also followed by the letter He, ah. And then patach would be ah. And then chataf patach would be ah. So we have ah, ah, and ah. Then when we move to the E vowel, we're going to use dots. And these dots are going to look like eggs. So multiple dots, more than one, would be like eggs as a picture. And we will say the eggs remind us of the sound of the E vowel. So just like the A vowel is pronounced ah, the E vowel is pronounced eh, eh. So we have the long, the medium, and the short, and even reduced on this E vowel pronounced eh. So we have sere or sere yud, or sere would also be the same as sagol yud, and that would be long. So we have the long eh for these three forms. Either sere followed by the letter yud, or also sagol followed by the letter yud is equal to sere without the yud, all long. Sagol is 3 dots in a downward triangle that is medium, and then add 2 dots on the right side, making 5 dots total now. The downward triangle and the colon-looking symbol of dots on the right, we see that it's hataf sagol, and that is short. But the 2 dots by themselves in a vertical line called a shva is either the shortest reduced E possible, or it's a glottal stop, closing out a consonant. For instance, that closed syllable, closing out that last consonant with just a sharp glottal stop. That would be a shva. And there's 2 types of shvas. We could either do the shva na or the shva nach. The shva na is the sounding shva that gives you a short E, or the shva nach, which is the resting shva that gives you a glottal stop. So in this case, we're going to move from the multiple dots of the E vowel pronounced eh, and the simple usage of 1 dot, that is the I vowel pronounced E. So we have A vowel pronounced ah, we have the E vowel pronounced eh, and now we have the I vowel pronounced E. And this 1 dot can either be followed by the letter yud to make it long, or without the letter yud to be a simple medium length I vowel pronounced E. So we have either E or E. And then we're going to use the vav, which was a vowel indicator, for an O or U. Remember the vowel indicators. The third option was the vav, which could be an O or a U. In this case, the O has a dot over the vav. So the dot is up in the air. So we say, oh, look at that bird in the air. And when we move the dot to the side, like a woman's purse on her side, we say, ooh, look at that nice purse. So now that we've learned the basics, let's greet each other not only with shalom, shalom, which we said shalom is like saying peace. We also use it for hello and goodbye, or shalom, shalom. Let's ask how you're doing today. One of our milim, our vowel words or vocabulary, is using ma, which means what, and shalom, which means peace or wholeness, with a suffix of a chaf sofit. And that's going to be ma, shlom, cha. Notice shalom gets cut to shlom. Ma, shlom, cha. Now that suffix at the end of shalom, cha, is masculine singular. So you're asking a man, ma shlom cha, what's your peace? What's your peace like today? Or how are you? For a woman, the suffix would be ech, and that would be ma shlomech. Ma shlomech is how you say to a female, how are you, or what's your peace like? Because ma is what? Ma is what? Like who is me? Or when is matai? So we see that there is ways to have interrogatives to ask like what's your name? What's your name? I would switch from shlom to shem, and it would be ma shimcha. What's your name? Or for a woman, ma shmech. Or if you just want to say my name is, shmi is a simple way to say it. Shmi, which is shem and ani contracted, shmi. We can also say how are you by using ma, but instead we're going to ask what's being heard or what's heard on the street. Manishma, manishma. So we've said mashlomcha for a man, mashlomech for a woman, but we can also simply say manishma. because nishma means you will hear. So when you talk about hearing, it's like hear and obey in Jewish thought or in the Torah, like na'aseh v'nishma. All that you have said we will do, or literally we will do what we hear. So manishma means from shma, what's being heard. So we say ma nishma, what are you hearing right now? What's being heard on the street? What's going on? Okay, so now we're ready for Parashat Emor. And we're going to go to Leviticus, the book of Vayikra, chapter 21, starting with verse 1. And it says in the Tree of Life version, Then Adonai said, Vayomer, to Moshe, speak, or Emor, to the Kohanim, which are the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say to them, A Kohen is not to allow himself to become unclean for the dead among his people. So this word Emor comes from the same root as Vayomer. Vayomer. So we're going to see that when we look at Vayomer and look at it for the very first time, we find it in the book of Genesis, the book of Bereshit, chapter 1, verse 3. Then God said, Let there be light, and there was light. In Hebrew, it's Vayomer Elohim, Yehi Or, Vayehi Or. Vayomer should be translated as Va and Yomer, and Yomer means he will say, but in this case, the Vav for Va is a Vav consecutive, and it changes the mind of God from what's unfinished or future tense to what's completed or finished, which is past tense. So we actually translated Vayomer, God said, or he said. So in this case, who said? Elohim. Elohim is God. Or translated God, it really means strong one. He's the strongest one in the universe. No one can be stronger than him, and no covenant can be stronger than the covenant of our God. So Elohim is God, who is the creator God, who we see here in Genesis. So it says, Vayomer Elohim, Yehi Or, Vayehi Or. Now, the words here for light is or twice, and then you see Yehi and Vayehi. So Yehi is from Haya, which means was. The verb to be in past tense was. In this case, Vayehi means and it came to pass, or and it was at that time. So when God says Yehi Or, he's saying let light be or come to pass or exist. As he said it would exist, it existed because he said Yehi Or, Vayehi Or. He said, and it shall be, and it was. So in this case, Or is light, and Yehi is, and it will be, or it came to pass. So we see here that this is the first time Vayomer is used. Now in our text, the word is actually Emor. Emor, which is the imperative, meaning it's kind of a command. Say. Not just to say, but say. Emor. This is second person, so it's saying it to someone. Masculine to a man, singular to one person. Emor, you are to say. So God is speaking to say something to the sons of Aaron, which are the Kohanim, the priests. If we were to say to a woman, we'd say Imri, Imri, second person feminine singular, Imri. Like to men, we would say Imru, Imru, which is the masculine plural form, still second person, Imru. And then we could even say feminine plural, Emorna, Emorna. So we have Amar like Emor, and in this case we have Na at the end, Emorna. Now all of this comes from the infinitive, which is Lomar. Lomar, which means to say. Lomar. The root for Lomar is the Aleph, the Mem, and the Resh. In this case, for Lomar, the Aleph fell away. Notice there's no Aleph in Lomar. The Aleph is usually there for structure because it's silent. In this case, the root would be Aleph, Mem, and Resh. And in Lomar, only the Mem and the Resh stay in the running. The mem and the resh stay in the running, stay present, and we add the lamed in front for two, because remember, it's an ox goad. So the lamed is important because it really points us in the direction we need to go. So when you look at this letter, lamed, we understand that it's a picture of a shepherd's staff. So it's going to point us in the direction we should go, an ox goad or a shepherd's staff. So we put the lamed in front to mean two or four as a prefix, because it's an ox goad that gets the animal, the ox, to do something. So two, the lamed as a prefix, is being used to move it into the action to do something. So in this case, it's to say. So we're going to use lomar as to say. And in this form, lomar, the only thing from the root that is remaining is the mem and the resh. But when we said emor, we saw the aleph there present, and we see the e vowel and the o vowel present with these multiple dots above and below. And we use lomar all the time. In fact, lomar can be used in a statement to say in other words or to rephrase something. Lomar bemilim acherot. Lomar bemilim acherot. I'm going to say that again. Lomar bemilim acherot. Milim are words. So lomar bemilim acherot means to say in other words. Other is acher, or acherot is plural. Milim is words. To rephrase something or say something in other words is lomar bemilim acherot. Now, here's another saying we could use. It goes without saying. We would say ein sorech lomar. Ein sorech lomar, which means it goes without saying. Ein meaning none or nothing or not needed. Sorech lomar, again, it's saying it is not necessary to say anything. Like when someone says thank you or you're welcome, you might omit one of those because you say, well, it's unnecessary. It doesn't need to be said. We're among friends. So again, amar is actually the root, but it's also the second person masculine singular form in what we call completed action in the past. And it means he said. The reason it is used for the root is because there's no prefix, suffix, or infix, letter fixed in between the root letters. Because remember, the root letters, the shoresh, is aleph, mem, resh, which would be, if we had a vowel, it would be A-M-R. In this case, the aleph is silent, but amar, we would have the A, the M, and the R for amar, to say. So that is the root, but the way you spell it out with vowels in a Strong's Concordance, when you look it up, is amar, which is the same. Amar is he said. I could even say amar, he said, or I can say amarti, amarti, which is first person masculine singular, past tense, or completed action. I said, amarti. Notice the T at the end, and the T or the yud at the end is coming from ani, I. So amarti already means or implies I said. Amarti. Omer is in present tense, or the participle, present tense as we'd say in English, first person masculine singular, to say or saying, Omer. So I would need to clarify ani Omer, for I say or I'm saying. Ani Omer. I could say ani Omer Shalom. I'm saying hello. If they said, what did you say? I could say ani Omer Shalom. Ani Omer Shalom, which means I am saying hello. A woman would add the sagol tav, or the et, at the end of Omer to make omeret, omeret, which is say or saying for first person feminine singular. Omeret, omeret. Now, when we think about omeret and we think about ani omeret, I would actually say I am saying. For a female, I would say ani omeret. Now, again, the similarity between Omer, not to get it confused with Omer, and Omer is a measure of wheat or barley. So, for instance, we have the word sheaf, Omer. So we have in Exodus 16:15, when Bnei Israel saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, "It is the bread that Adonai has given you to eat." So in verse 16 it says, "This is the word that Adonai has commanded. Every man is to gather according to his needs, an omer, or a sheaf, per person, according to the number of people per household. Each man is to take it for those who are in his house." So remember, when we talk about the idea of celebrating Pesach or Passover, we know that there is a 3-day and 3-night observance of Passover. And Matthew 12:4 says that Yeshua would be in the grave 3 days and 3 nights, like Jonah was in the belly of the big fish. You might call him a whale. So when you see the 3 days and 3 nights of Passover, you have to understand that Passover has a day observance with matzah and maror, bitter herb. Matzah is unleavened bread, and then the Passover or the Pesach. So from the second day of unleavened bread, we have a counting of the omer. And the omer is a sheaf or a measure of barley or wheat. Now, during Passover, we have the barley harvest. So we're literally counting every day of the barley harvest from the second day of unleavened bread, which would be the third day of Passover week. We actually have a counting of the omer. How long do we count? Leviticus 23 tells us to count 7 weeks from that day, which is 49 days. And that will lead us to the 50th day, known as Pentecost, but in Hebrew, Shavuot, which is 7 weeks from the second day of unleavened bread. So we actually see that you're counting 7 weeks, which is 49 days, to be able to bring this harvest of barley to the temple. So we see the omer here, especially in verse 16, it's a sheaf per person. So this is what we call Sefirat HaOmer. Sefirat HaOmer. So that is the counting of the Omer, an important verbal counting of each of the 49 days, starting with the Sunday wave offering of a sheaf of ripe grain with a sacrifice immediately following the commencement of the grain harvest, and the first fruits festival celebrating the end of the grain harvest, or Feast of Weeks, known as in Hebrew Shavuot. Or in Greek, we get the word Pentecost from Pentecosta, or the ancient Greek of the Septuagint is Pentakonta. So this is in the Mosaic Law or the Hebrew Bible that you have Sefirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer. It literally counts us as Messianic believers to Pentecost Sunday. Of course, Christians use the solar calendar or solar lunar calendar, while Jews use a biblical lunar calendar. So sometimes it can be a little bit different in timing. For instance, Shavuot is going to be on Sunday evening, May the 16th of this year, 2021. But in the Christian calendar, they're actually going off of Easter and the resurrection, or Resurrection Sunday, and that would be a few days after that, and it would be the 23rd of May that Pentecost Sunday would be celebrated. But it's the same as the Jewish observance of Shavuot, but just done on a different day because of the different calendars. So we can actually see that just as we learn how to use Amar as a root, or Lomar, or Amar, as you see in the Strong's Concordance, we also learned in previous weeks how to say to speak. To say and to speak are very commonly interchanged. So ledaber is related to lomar, to say, versus to speak. And we had the present tense medaber, I, you, or he speaks, or ani medaber. Or we have Ata medaber, and we also have hu medaber. So ani medaber is I speak. A Change in pronoun would make it ata medaber, which is you speak. And then hu medaber is he speaks. A woman would say ani medaberet. Remember how we had omeret? Now we have medaberet. A female would say I speak ani medaberet. Or at medaberet, if you're talking to a woman. You, feminine, would be at medaberet. And then she would be third person, he medaberet. So he is she, and medaberet is speak. So we go plural with males and females present. We say anachnu medabrim, anachnu medabrim, or all women anachnu medabrot. Or like when we individually say ani medaber ivrit, I speak Hebrew. Or you speak Hebrew because you could say ani lomed ivrit, I'm learning Hebrew, from lamad, another root. Notice the lamed in front of lamad, just like we have the lamed in front of ledaber, and we had the lamed in front of lomar. The lamed means two. So we have lamad, very similar to lomed, or in infinitive form, the root lamed mem dalet, we'd add another lamed in front for two, and it'd be lilmod, lilmod. So I could say ani lomed ivrit, I'm learning Hebrew, just like someone learns about the Hebrew of the Torah in the Talmud. Notice the lamed, the mem, and the dalet again, because it's a book of learning, the Talmud, the Talmud, a book of Jewish learning, Torah commentary of the sages. You could say, ata lomed ivrit, are you learning Hebrew? To a person, to a male, ata lomed ivrit, you are learning Hebrew. Or ata lomed ivrit, you are learning Hebrew? As a question. Ken, ani lomed kasat ivrit, yes, I am learning a little Hebrew. Or you could say, ken, ani medaber kasat ivrit, I speak a little bit of Hebrew. Or maybe if you don't speak Hebrew, you could say, ani medaber anglit, I speak English. Notice the languages have the letter tav, the yud tav at the end, anglit, ivrit. Or you could say, ani lomed anglit, I'm learning Hebrew. An Israeli would be learning Hebrew in America. Or ani lomed ivrit, I'm learning Hebrew, versus ani lomedet ivrit for a female. Notice the et, the sagol tav at the end of lomed becomes lomedet, ani lomedet ivrit. Again, this is all in relationship of ledaber and lomar, to say or to speak. In this case, lamad is to learn. So again, we can see all these, even ani medaber Sephardit, which is I'm learning, or I can speak Spanish. And this is very important to understand, that when you're speaking the Hebrew tongue, especially saying that I know or can speak or learn Hebrew, ata lomed ivrit, are you learning Hebrew today? You would understand that this portion of Emor doesn't just mean to say, but also teaches us how to celebrate the feasts of the Lord, from Pesach all the way to Sukkot. Just like we start the Jewish New Year with Rosh Hashanah, known as Yom Teruah, the day of the trumpet blast, or the head of the year. Remember, Rosh means head. From a picture, we see Reish is a pictograph of Rosh, and Rosh Hashanah means head of the year. Very similar to celebrating every month Rosh Chodesh, the head of renewal, or the new moon. And every new moon, we look forward to celebrating the Hagim. Hagim meaning the feasts, or to say Chag Sameach, happy holiday, joyful feast. So these are the Moed, or the Moadim, the appointed times or feasts of the Lord. Or we literally can say Moadei Adonai, the feasts of the Lord. They're also known as Mikra'e Kodesh. Mikra'e Kodesh. These are holy convocations or sacred assemblies. So everything that we're learning, whether it's Pesach or it's Rosh Hashanah or one of the feast days we're celebrating, we understand that we have a celebration, we have an obligation, we have a devotion to celebrate the feasts of the Lord. And these Moadei Adonai are very important to us, not only as Messianic believers, as it is for the Jewish community, but it's also a great way for Christians to celebrate the Jewish roots of their faith. So at this time, we'll quickly see if we can take a look at a couple Hebrew words and how you can use some resources. Many of you know that we use Bible Gateway for different versions of the Bible, and we love to use Blue Letter Bible for looking up the Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. This time, we can see that I have the word Amar, the root, here on the screen. Look at my computer. You can see me online showing you Blue Letter Bible, Amar, Amar. And when you're looking at Amar, remember this comes from Leviticus 21, verse 1, where it says, speak to the priests. And here is the word Vayomer. And the root is the Aleph, the Mem, and the Resh. And then we have Emor. And the root, again, is the Aleph, the Mem, and the Resh. So when we look at Amar, we see that it means to say. It can be translated to speak or to utter, even to answer. But the references are found here in Genesis 1:3 is the first time, the law first mentioned, we have, and God said. Again, in verse 6 and 9 of that same chapter, verse 11, chapter 1, verse 14. So we have verses 3, 6, 9, 11, 14, verse 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 29. Goes on to chapter 2. You can actually do a study on how many times God said versus how many times he spoke. So in saying certain things, whatever he spoke into existence, it came to pass. Also, we have chapter 23, where he speaks of the feasts of the Lord. Here we are. Daber el bnei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem moadei. Here we go. Adonai asher tikreu. That is from Kara. Tikreu otam mikre kodesh ele, and then it says hem, Elehem Moadai. So Moadai means my feast. So speak to the sons of Israel, and you're to say to them, these are the feasts of Adonai that I have literally proclaimed or called out. He says, I've called them out, and I've called them Mikre Kodesh, Elehem Moadai. And these are my feasts. So you can go to each one and look them up. All right, so those are some great resources for you. And for time's sake, I'm going to go ahead and close out with the priestly blessing. All right, you ready? Lift your hands. Number 6, 24 through 26. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'nihunecha, Yisa Adonai v'lecha, v'asim lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you, be gracious to you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you perfect peace. In the name of Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace, Yeshua the Messiah, we pray. In Yeshua's name, amen. Amen. Well, it's been great having everybody with us tonight, and we're so excited that you've been on with us with Facebook Live. And do not forget that you can even join us and follow us on YouTube. Subscribe, like, comment, save the video, watch it later. And we're also grateful that we had many that were on tonight. So until next Tuesday, we'll see you for some more Hebrew. Laila Tov. Erev Tov, Lehitrot.